I stood on the edge of the cliff, the wind whipping my hair around my face, stinging my eyes. Below me, the ocean crashed against the jagged rocks, a swirling vortex of white foam and dark water. It was a long way down, a very long way, and for a moment, just a fleeting moment, I wondered what it would feel like to fall, to just let go and let the wind take me. But then I heard a voice, a small, quiet voice, but it cut through the roar of the ocean like a knife. "Mommy?" I turned, and there she was, my little girl, Lily, standing a few feet away, her big brown eyes wide with fear. She was holding something in her hand, clutching it tightly to her chest. A small, worn teddy bear, the one I had given her when she was born. "Mommy, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice trembling. I forced a smile, a brittle, fake smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Just looking at the view, sweetie," I said, my voice sounding strange and hollow even to my own ears. "Just looking at the view." I held out my hand to her, and she ran into my arms, burying her face in my stomach. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tight, breathing in the scent of her hair, a mixture of lavender shampoo and childhood innocence. I closed my eyes, the tears finally spilling over, hot and fast down my cheeks. I had almost done it. I had almost given up. But looking at my daughter, feeling her small body pressed against mine, I knew I couldn't. Not yet. Not while there was still a chance. A chance to fight back. A chance to reclaim what was ours. A chance to make him pay for what he had done. Before this story continues, please leave a comment below telling us which city or country you are watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this one. It all started 5 years ago, on a day that seemed perfect, just like any other. I was happy. I had a loving husband, Mark, a beautiful daughter, Lily, and a comfortable life. Mark was a successful architect, and I was a stay-at-home mom, dedicating my life to raising our daughter and creating a warm, loving home. We lived in a beautiful house in a quiet suburb, the kind of place where everyone knew their neighbors and children played in the streets until dusk. It was the picture-perfect life, or so I thought. Mark was the charming, charismatic type. He could walk into a room and instantly become the center of attention. He was funny, intelligent, and always knew the right thing to say. I fell for him hard and fast, and we were married within a year of meeting. For the first few years, everything was wonderful. We traveled, we laughed, we built a life together. When Lily was born, it felt like our happiness was complete. Mark was a doting father, always there for every milestone, every first step, every first word. But then, things started to change. It was subtle at first, little things that I brushed off as stress from work. He became more distant, more preoccupied. He started working later and later, coming home exhausted and irritable. He stopped talking to me, stopped sharing his day, stopped asking about mine. The laughter that used to fill our home was replaced by a heavy, oppressive silence. I tried to talk to him, to find out what was wrong, but he would just brush me off, saying he was tired, stressed, that I wouldn't understand. Then, the criticism started. It began with small things, my cooking, the way I dressed, the way I kept the house. "This chicken is a bit dry, isn't it?" he would say, pushing his plate away. Or, "Are you wearing that old dress again?" with a look of distaste. I tried harder, cooked his favorite meals, bought new clothes, kept the house spotless, but it was never enough. The criticism became more frequent, more personal. He would criticize my parenting, telling me I was too soft on Lily, that I was spoiling her. He would criticize my intelligence, telling me I didn't understand the real world, that I was naive. He would criticize my appearance, telling me I had let myself go, that I wasn't the woman he married. I started to believe him. I started to doubt myself, my abilities, my worth. I felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own home, constantly afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing. I became withdrawn, anxious, depressed. I lost confidence in myself, in my ability to be a good wife, a good mother. Lily noticed the change too. She became quieter, more clingy. She would ask me why Daddy was always angry, why he didn't play with her anymore. I didn't know what to tell her. How could I explain that the man we both loved, the man who was supposed to be our protector, was slowly breaking us down. I tried to shield her from it as much as I could, but it was impossible. Mark's anger was like a dark cloud that hung over our home, affecting everything and everyone. One night, things came to a head. Mark had come home late again, smelling of alcohol and perfume. I asked him where he had been, and he exploded. He started yelling, throwing things, calling me names. I was terrified. I had never seen him like this before. He was like a stranger, a monster. I grabbed Lily and ran to the bedroom, locking the door behind us. We huddled together on the bed, listening to him rage outside. He pounded on the door, threatening to break it down. I was shaking, crying, praying that he would stop. Eventually, the noise died down, and I heard him stumble off to the guest room. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, holding Lily, listening to her steady breathing, and wondering how my life had come to this. The next morning, Mark acted as if nothing had happened. He was calm, charming, apologetic. He told me he was sorry, that he had been stressed at work, that he had had too much to drink. He promised it wouldn't happen again. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that the man I loved was still in there somewhere, hidden beneath the anger and the stress. So I forgave him. I forgave him, and the cycle continued. The periods of calm became shorter, the outbursts more frequent and more violent. He never hit me, not physically, but his words were weapons, sharp and cruel, designed to inflict maximum pain. He chipped away at my self-esteem, my confidence, my sanity. He made me believe that I was worthless, that I deserved his anger, that I was lucky he stayed with me at all. Then came the final blow. It was a Tuesday, a day like any other. Mark had left for work early, and I was busy getting Lily ready for school. The doorbell rang, and when I opened it, I was served with divorce papers. I stared at the papers in disbelief, my mind unable to process what I was seeing. Divorce? Mark wanted a divorce? Why? What had I done? I called him, but he didn't answer. I called his office, but his secretary told me he was in meetings all day and couldn't be disturbed. I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. I was reeling, in shock. When I finally got a hold of him later that day, he was cold, distant, unfeeling. He told me he was unhappy, that he hadn't loved me for a long time, that he wanted to start over. He said he wanted a divorce, and he wanted full custody of Lily. He said I was an unfit mother, that I was emotionally unstable, that I couldn't provide for her. He said he was doing it for Lily's own good. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Unfit mother? Emotionally unstable? It was all lies. He was the one who was unstable, the one with the anger issues, the one who was tearing our family apart. But he was also the one with the money, the power, the connections. He was a successful architect, respected in the community. I was a stay-at-home mom with no income, no job prospects, no support system. Who would believe me over him? I felt completely helpless, completely alone. I didn't know where to turn, what to do. I had no money, no lawyer, no one to fight for me. Mark had seen to that. He had slowly isolated me from my friends and family over the years, making me dependent on him for everything. Now, he was using that dependency against me. He had frozen our joint bank accounts, canceled my credit cards, cut off my access to any funds. I was penniless, powerless, and facing the fight of my life. But then, I looked at Lily. I looked at her sweet, innocent face, her trusting eyes, and I knew I couldn't give up. I couldn't let him take her away from me. She was my world, my everything. I had to fight, for her sake and for mine. I had to find a way to stand up to Mark, to expose his lies, to protect my daughter. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew I had to try. I started by looking for a lawyer. It was harder than I thought. Most lawyers required a large retainer, money I didn't have. I called legal aid societies, pro bono organizations, anyone who might be able to help. I was turned away time and time again. They told me my case was too complex, that Mark had too many resources, that I didn't have a chance. I felt like I was hitting a brick wall at every turn. Despair threatened to overwhelm me, but I pushed it down. I couldn't afford to despair. Not now. Finally, I found a lawyer who was willing to take my case. Her name was Sarah, and she worked for a small, nonprofit organization that helped victims of domestic abuse. She was young, passionate, and determined. She listened to my story with empathy and understanding, and she promised to do everything she could to help me. She warned me that it would be an uphill battle, that Mark and his lawyer would fight dirty, that it would be a long and difficult process. But she also gave me hope. She told me that I wasn't alone, that there were people who cared, people who were willing to fight for me. We started by gathering evidence. I documented everything Mark had done, every outburst, every insult, every threat. I kept a journal, recording dates, times, details. I saved text messages, emails, voicemails, anything that could prove his emotional abuse, his manipulative behavior. Sarah helped me get a restraining order against Mark, citing his volatile temper and his threats. It wasn't much, but it was a start. It gave me a small sense of security, a feeling that I was finally taking control. Mark, of course, was furious. He denied everything, calling me a liar, a manipulator, a crazy woman. He hired a high-powered divorce lawyer, a man named Mr. Sterling, who was known for his aggressive tactics and his willingness to do whatever it took to win. Mr. Sterling immediately filed a motion for full custody of Lily, claiming that I was mentally unstable and a danger to my daughter. He painted a picture of me as a hysterical, irrational woman who was incapable of caring for a child. He used my past struggles with anxiety and depression against me, twisting them to make me look unfit. He even tried to use my lack of income as proof that I couldn't provide for Lily, ignoring the fact that Mark was the one who had cut me off financially. It was a brutal, humiliating process. I had to undergo psychological evaluations, meet with social workers, answer intrusive questions about my past, my mental health, my parenting. I felt like I was on trial, like every aspect of my life was being scrutinized and judged. Mark, meanwhile, played the role of the concerned, loving father perfectly. He was calm, reasonable, cooperative. He charmed the social workers, the psychologists, even the judge. He made me look like the problem, the one who was tearing the family apart. I began to doubt myself again. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was unfit. Maybe Lily would be better off with Mark. He had the money, the stability, the resources. What did I have to offer her? Just my love and my determination to protect her. Was that enough? One night, I was sitting in Lily's room, watching her sleep. She looked so peaceful, so innocent. I reached out and stroked her hair, my heart aching with love for her. I knew then, with absolute certainty, that I could never give her up. I could never let Mark take her away from me. He might have the money and the power, but I had the truth. And I had a mother's love, a force stronger than anything else in the world. I decided to fight back, harder than ever. I worked with Sarah to build our case, to gather more evidence, to find witnesses who could attest to Mark's behavior. It wasn't easy. Mark had alienated most of our friends, and his family was firmly on his side. But I found a few people who were willing to speak up. A former neighbor who had heard Mark yelling at me, a babysitter who had witnessed his controlling behavior, a teacher who had noticed changes in Lily's behavior. It wasn't much, but it was something. The day of the trial finally arrived. I was terrified. I felt like I was walking to my own execution. The courtroom was imposing, with its high ceilings, dark wood paneling, and stern-faced judge. Mark looked confident, smug, sitting next to his high-priced lawyer. Sarah held my hand, whispering words of encouragement. The trial was a nightmare. Mr. Sterling was relentless, attacking my character, my parenting, my sanity. He twisted my words, took things out of context, made me look like a monster. I tried to stay calm, to answer his questions truthfully, but it was hard. I felt like I was being torn apart, piece by piece. Mark took the stand and gave a flawless performance. He was the aggrieved husband, the concerned father, the victim of a crazy wife. He lied smoothly, convincingly, making himself look like a saint and me like a sinner. He even shed a few tears, talking about how much he loved Lily and how he only wanted what was best for her. I watched him, sick to my stomach, knowing that it was all an act. Then it was my turn. I sat in the witness stand, my hands trembling, my voice shaking. I told my story, the truth, as best I could. I talked about the emotional abuse, the control, the manipulation. I talked about how much I loved Lily, how I had always put her first, how I would do anything to protect her. I looked at the judge, pleading with him to believe me, to see through Mark's lies, but it felt like no one was listening. The judge seemed bored, disinterested. Mr. Sterling smirked, knowing he was winning. Mark looked at me with cold, empty eyes, a triumphant smile playing on his lips. I felt a wave of despair wash over me. I was going to lose. I was going to lose Lily. Then, Sarah called her last witness. "I call Lily to the stand," she said, her voice clear and steady. A murmur ran through the courtroom. A child? A 7-year-old child? It was highly unusual, even risky. The judge frowned, looking skeptical. Mr. Sterling objected immediately, arguing that Lily was too young, that it would be traumatic for her, that she had been coached by me. But Sarah stood her ground. "Your Honor," she said, "Lily is the one who has been most affected by this. She has a right to be heard. She has a right to tell her own story." The judge hesitated, then nodded. "Very well," he said, "but I will question her myself, and I will not allow any leading questions or coaching." Lily walked to the witness stand, looking small and fragile in the big chair. She was holding her teddy bear, clutching it tightly. She looked scared, but also determined. The judge leaned forward, his voice gentle. "Lily," he said, "do you know why you're here?" Lily nodded. "Yes," she said, her voice small, "to tell the truth." "And do you know the difference between the truth and a lie?" the judge asked. Lily nodded again. "Yes, a lie is when you say something that isn't real. The truth is what really happened." The judge smiled. "Good. Now, Lily, can you tell me about your mommy and daddy? What are they like?" Lily looked at me, then at Mark. She took a deep breath. "Mommy is nice," she said. "She plays with me and reads me stories and tucks me in at night. She makes me pancakes on Saturdays, and she always knows when I'm sad." She paused and looked down at her teddy bear. Daddy used to be nice too. But then he got angry. He started yelling a lot, at Mommy, and sometimes at me." Mark shifted in his seat, his smile fading. "What does Daddy yell about?" the judge asked. "Everything," Lily said. "If dinner isn't ready on time, if my toys are messy, if Mommy wears a dress he doesn't like. He yells that Mommy is stupid and lazy and fat. He says she can't do anything right." Tears welled up in my eyes. I hadn't known she had heard all of that. I thought I had shielded her, protected her, but she had heard every word. "How does that make you feel, Lily?" the judge asked. "Sad," Lily said, her voice trembling, "and scared. I don't like it when Daddy yells. It makes my tummy hurt." "Does Daddy ever yell at you?" the judge asked. Lily nodded slowly. "Sometimes, when I make a mistake, or when I cry. He says I'm a crybaby, like Mommy. He says I need to toughen up." Mark was glaring at Lily now, his face red with anger. Mr. Sterling whispered something to him, trying to calm him down. "Lily," the judge said, "who do you want to live with, your Mommy or your Daddy?" Lily looked at me, her eyes filled with love. Then she looked at Mark, and I saw fear in her eyes. "I want to live with Mommy," she said, her voice clear and firm. "Daddy is scary when he's angry. Mommy makes me feel safe." The courtroom was silent. Everyone was looking at Lily, this small child who had just told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Her words were simple, but they were powerful. They had cut through all the lies, all the manipulation, all the legal maneuvering. They had revealed the heart of the matter. Mark's facade had cracked. He was no longer the charming, confident man. He was angry, exposed, desperate. He started to say something, to deny Lily's words, but Mr. Sterling stopped him. The judge looked at Mark, then at me, then finally at Lily. He took a deep breath and leaned back in his chair. "Thank you, Lily," he said. "You've been very brave. You can go back to your Mommy now." Lily ran to me and I hugged her tightly, burying my face in her hair. I was crying, tears of relief and gratitude. She had done it. She had saved us. The judge called the lawyers to the bench. They talked for a few minutes, their voices low. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I saw Sarah smile. When they returned to their seats, the judge looked out over the courtroom. "This has been a difficult case," he said. "There have been many allegations, much conflicting testimony, but the testimony of the child Lily has been most enlightening." He paused and looked directly at Mark. "Mr. Sterling," he said, "your client may be a successful architect, a respected member of the community, but that does not make him a good father. The evidence presented today, and particularly the testimony of the child, paints a clear picture of emotional abuse and control." He turned to me. "Mrs. Sterling," he said, "you may not have a job or a lot of money, but you have something that money can't buy. You have the love and trust of your daughter. You have provided her with a safe, nurturing environment despite the difficult circumstances." He took a deep breath and delivered his verdict. "Therefore, I am granting full custody of Lily to her mother. Mr. Sterling will have visitation rights, but they will be supervised until he completes an anger management course and a parenting class. He will also be required to pay child support and alimony to ensure that Mrs. Sterling and Lily can live comfortably." I couldn't believe it. I had won. Against all odds, against all the power and money and lies, I had won. I hugged Lily tighter, tears streaming down my face. Sarah was smiling, squeezing my hand. Mark looked stunned, defeated. Mr. Sterling was packing up his briefcase, his face grim. It wasn't over, of course. There would still be challenges ahead. Mark would not give up easily. He would appeal the decision. He would try to find ways to undermine me, to make my life difficult. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had faced the worst, and I had come out stronger. I had my daughter, and I had the truth, and that was all I needed. As I walked out of the courtroom holding Lily's hand, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. The road ahead would be long and hard, but I knew I could walk it. I was a mother, and I would do whatever it took to protect my child. I had found my voice, and I would never let anyone silence me again. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed in our new small apartment, she looked up at me with sleepy eyes. "Mommy," she said, "are we safe now?" I kissed her forehead and smiled. "Yes, sweetie," I said. "We're safe. Nobody's going to hurt us ever again." She smiled back, closed her eyes, and drifted off to sleep, her teddy bear tucked snugly under her arm. I watched her for a long time, my heart overflowing with love and gratitude. We had a long way to go, but we had taken the first step, and we had taken it together. The gavel had fallen, the verdict was read, and for a few weeks, life felt like a dream, a quiet, peaceful dream. I moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't the sprawling suburban mansion I had lived in with Mark. The paint was peeling slightly in the hallway, the faucet in the kitchen dripped no matter how hard I twisted it, and the view from the window was of a brick alleyway, not a manicured lawn. But to me, it was a palace. It was mine. It was ours. There was no shouting, no walking on eggshells, no heavy footsteps approaching the door that made my heart race in terror. For the first time in 7 years, I could breathe. Lily flourished. Without the constant tension, her laughter returned, loud and unrestrained. We painted her room yellow, her favorite color, and covered the walls with her drawings. We ate cereal for dinner if we felt like it. We danced in the living room in our pajamas. We were free. But freedom, I quickly learned, comes with a price. And Mark was determined to make that price as high as possible. The judge had ordered him to pay child support and alimony, a significant sum given his success as an architect. But Mark was a man who believed himself above the law. The first month, the check didn't arrive. I waited, checking the mailbox every day, feeling a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach. When I called his lawyer, Mr. Sterling, I was given the runaround. Administrative errors, bank delays, processing issues, excuses. I dipped into the small emergency fund Sarah, my lawyer, had helped me secure from the joint account before the trial. But it wasn't much. I needed a job. I hadn't worked in 7 years. My degree in art history felt like a relic from another life. I applied everywhere: libraries, museums, art galleries, even coffee shops. But the gap in my resume was a red flag, and Mark, I suspected, was playing a part in this too. During an interview at a local gallery, the manager looked at my application, saw my last name, and asked if I was related to Mark Sterling, the architect. When I said yes, his demeanor changed instantly. He became cold, dismissive, and ended the interview 5 minutes later. Mark's influence ran deep in this city. He was poisoning the well. Finally, I found a job at a small, dusty bookstore downtown. The owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Higgins, didn't care about my resume or my ex-husband. She just liked that I knew the difference between Monet and Manet. The pay was minimum wage, barely enough to cover rent and groceries, let alone legal fees if Mark dragged me back to court. But it was honest work. It was a start. 3 months passed. The financial strain was suffocating. I was skipping meals so Lily could have new shoes for school. I was sewing patches onto my clothes instead of buying new ones. Mark knew. He had to know. One afternoon, after a supervised visitation with Lily at the community center, he cornered me in the parking lot. He looked impeccable in his Italian suit, leaning against his luxury car, a stark contrast to my worn-out coat and the bus pass in my hand. "You look tired, darling," he said, his voice dripping with faux concern. "Is the single life not everything you dreamed of?" "I'm fine, Mark," I said, gripping Lily's hand tighter. "We're happy." He laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Happy? Look at you. You're wasting away. And look at Lily. She's wearing sneakers from a discount bin. Is this the life you fought so hard for? Poverty? Struggle?" He stepped closer, invading my personal space. "It doesn't have to be this way, you know. Drop the alimony claim. Admit you made a mistake. Maybe I'll be generous." "I would rather starve than take a penny from you that the law doesn't force you to give," I spat back. "Stay away from us." I walked away, my head held high, but my hands were shaking. He was trying to break me. He was trying to starve me into submission. He wanted me to crawl back to him, or at least admit that I couldn't survive without him. But he underestimated me. He underestimated a mother's will to survive. That weekend, a courier arrived at my apartment door. He delivered 3 large cardboard boxes. No note, just my name scrawled on the top in Mark's aggressive handwriting. I opened them cautiously. They were filled with my things from the old house. But it wasn't my clothes or my jewelry. It was junk. Old magazines I had saved, broken picture frames, half-used notebooks, scraps of fabric from my old sewing projects. He was cleaning house, treating my memories like garbage. I sat on the floor, sifting through the debris of my past life. It was humiliating. He had kept everything of value and sent me the trash. I was about to tape the boxes back up and throw them in the dumpster when something caught my eye. In the bottom of the second box, wedged between 2 old cookbooks, was a black leather notebook. It wasn't mine. I didn't recognize it. I pulled it out. It was heavy, expensive, the kind of notebook Mark used for his architectural sketches. I opened it, expecting to see drawings of buildings or floor plans. The first few pages were indeed sketches, rough drafts of the city library he had designed, a new shopping complex downtown. But as I flipped further, the sketches stopped. The middle of the notebook was filled with numbers, columns and columns of numbers, dates, names of companies I had never heard of. Orion Holdings, Blue Water LLC, Apex Ventures. I frowned. Mark never talked about business at home. He said I wouldn't understand. I looked closer at the dates. They went back 5 years. The amounts next to the dates were staggering. $50,000, $100,000. Transfers, deposits, withdrawals. My heart started to race. During the divorce proceedings, Mark had cried poverty. He claimed his firm was struggling, that the market was down, that his income had dropped significantly. That was why the judge hadn't awarded me a huge settlement, just monthly support based on his reduced income. But these numbers told a different story. If this notebook was what I thought it was, Mark wasn't just comfortable, he was hiding millions. I spent the entire night poring over that notebook. I wasn't an accountant, but I wasn't stupid. I recognized patterns. The transfers to Orion Holdings always happened a few days after he received a large payment from a client. But those payments weren't reflected in the official bank statements we had seen in court. He was siphoning money. He was cooking the books. The next morning, I called Sarah. I didn't tell her over the phone. I was paranoid now. If Mark was hiding this much money, what else was he capable of? I asked her to meet me at the bookstore after hours. When I showed her the notebook, her eyes went wide. "Where did you get this?" she whispered, tracing the columns of figures. "He sent it to me," I said. "By accident. He sent me boxes of junk from the house. He must have scooped this up from a drawer thinking it was one of my old sketchbooks. They look similar." Sarah looked up at me, her face pale. "This isn't just hidden assets, Clara. This is fraud, tax evasion, money laundering maybe. Look at these offshore accounts, the Caymans, Switzerland. If this is real, Mark isn't just a bad husband, he's a criminal." "Can we use it?" I asked, hope flaring in my chest. "Can we go back to court?" "We have to be careful," Sarah warned. "If he finds out we have this, he will come for you. And not with lawyers this time. Men who hide this kind of money are dangerous. We need to verify this. We need a forensic accountant to link these handwritten notes to actual bank accounts. And we need to do it quietly." She took the notebook, promising to make copies and lock the original in her office safe. I walked home that night feeling a strange mixture of triumph and terror. I held the key to Mark's destruction, but I also held a target on my back. 2 days later, the atmosphere shifted. Mark didn't call or text, but I felt it. A black sedan parked across the street from my apartment for hours. When I walked Lily to school, I felt eyes on me. Strange hang-up calls started coming to my landline in the middle of the night. Heavy breathing, then a click. He knew. Or he suspected. Maybe he had gone looking for the notebook and realized it was missing. Then came the visitation day. It was Saturday. Mark picked Lily up at 10 a.m. He was smiling, but it wasn't his usual charming smile. It was tight, predatory. "Have you been going through old boxes, Clara?" he asked as he buckled Lily into the car seat. My blood ran cold. "I threw most of it out," I lied, keeping my voice steady. "Why? Did you lose something?" He stared at me for a long moment, his eyes searching mine. "Just a sketchbook, nothing important, but if you find it, you should return it. It has sentimental value." "I haven't seen it," I said. He nodded slowly, not believing me. "Enjoy your day off," he said, and drove away. I spent the next 6 hours in a state of panic. I cleaned the apartment twice. I paced the floor. I checked the locks. I called Sarah. She told me to stay calm, that he was fishing. But I knew Mark. He wasn't fishing. He was hunting. When he brought Lily back at 4 p.m., she was quiet. Too quiet. Usually she chattered about the movies they watched or the ice cream they ate. Today, she walked straight into the apartment and sat on the sofa, hugging her teddy bear. "Did you have fun, sweetie?" I asked, kneeling beside her. She looked at me, her big eyes filled with confusion. "Mommy, Daddy said something weird." "What did he say?" "He asked me if you talk to strangers. He asked if you show your special books to anyone." I froze. He was using our daughter. He was interrogating her. "What did you say, Lily?" "I said you only read books at the store." And he got mad. He squeezed the steering wheel really hard. And then he made a phone call. "Did you hear what he said?" He said she has it. We need to fix this. "Mommy, is Daddy in trouble?" I pulled her into a hug, my heart hammering against my ribs. "No, sweetie, everything is fine." But everything was not fine. "We need to fix this." Mark wasn't working alone. We. Who was we? The next day, I went to work at the bookstore. I was shelving books in the back corner when a man walked in. He didn't look like a reader. He was tall, wearing a leather jacket, with a scar running down his cheek. He didn't browse. He walked straight up to the counter where Mrs. Higgins was sitting. "I'm looking for Clara," he rumbled. Mrs. Higgins, bless her heart, squinted at him. "She's busy. Can I take a message?" "Just tell her she has something that belongs to a friend of mine, and she has 24 hours to return it, or the little girl pays the price." He didn't yell. He didn't have to. He turned and walked out, the bell on the door chiming cheerfully behind him. I dropped the stack of books I was holding. I ran to the front, but he was gone. Mrs. Higgins was shaking. "Clara, who was that? What is going on?" "I have to go," I said, grabbing my bag. "I have to get Lily." I ran all the way to Lily's school. I burst into the office, demanding to see my daughter. The secretary looked alarmed but called Lily down. When I saw her walking down the hallway, safe and sound, I almost collapsed. I checked her out early. We weren't going back to the apartment. It wasn't safe. I called Sarah from a payphone. "He threatened Lily," I sobbed. "A man came to my work. He said I have 24 hours. "Okay," Sarah said, her voice steel. "This is escalated. We can't wait for the forensic accountant. We need to go to the police, now. Meet me at the 4th precinct. Bring Lily." We stayed at a cheap motel that night, paying cash. I didn't sleep. I sat in a chair by the door, pushing a dresser against it. I held the copy of the notebook pages Sarah had given me. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. This was a war. The next morning, we went to the police station. We sat with a detective, a weary-looking man named Detective Miller. Sarah laid it all out. The abuse, the divorce, the hidden assets, the threat. She showed him the copies of the notebook. Detective Miller looked skeptical at first. A domestic dispute, a bitter ex-wife. But when he looked at the names in the notebook, Orion Holdings, Blue Water LLC, his expression changed. He sat up straighter. He exchanged a look with his partner. "Mrs. Sterling," he said carefully, "where is the original notebook?" "It's in a safe," Sarah answered for me. "Good. Keep it there. You didn't just stumble onto your husband's savings. These companies, Orion Holdings specifically, we've been trying to link to a money laundering operation for the city's construction unions for 2 years. We knew the money was moving, but we didn't know who the architect was, literally." My jaw dropped. Mark wasn't just hiding his own money. He was washing money for organized crime. That's why he was so terrified. That's why he threatened Lily. If this notebook got out, he wouldn't just lose his money, he would lose his life. The people he was working for would kill him to keep him quiet. "We need you to wear a wire," Detective Miller said. "What?" I exclaimed. "No, I'm not a cop. I'm a mother. I can't." "Clara," Sarah said gently, "this is the only way to end it. We have the numbers, but we need to link them to him. We need him to admit the notebook is his. We need him to admit he sent the man to threaten you. If we get that on tape, we can arrest him for extortion and conspiracy immediately. We can put him away for a long time. If we don't, he will keep coming. He won't stop until he gets that notebook back." I looked at Lily, who was coloring in the corner of the interrogation room, oblivious to the danger she was in. Mark had brought danger to her doorstep. He had threatened her life to protect his dirty money. I felt a surge of anger so hot it burned away the fear. "I'll do it," I said. "Tell me what to do." The plan was simple. I would call Mark. I would tell him I found the notebook and I wanted to make a deal. I would meet him in a public place. I would get him to talk. We set the meeting for that afternoon at a park near the river. It was open, public, but quiet enough to talk. Police officers would be stationed everywhere in plain clothes. I wore a small microphone taped under my shirt. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would dislodge the wire. I sat on a bench, clutching my purse. The notebook wasn't in it, just a decoy. Mark arrived 10 minutes late. He didn't look polished today. He looked ragged. His eyes were bloodshot. He was desperate. He sat down next to me, not too close. "Do you have it?" he asked, his voice a low growl. "I have it," I said, "but first I want to know. Who was the man you sent to the bookstore? He scared Mrs. Higgins half to death." Mark sneered. "Just an associate. He gets enthusiastic. But he made the point, didn't he? You're out of your depth, Clara. Give me the book." "Why is it so important, Mark?" I pressed, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "It's just numbers. Orion Holdings? Blue Water?" Mark flinched. He looked around nervously. "Shut up. Don't say those names out loud." "Why? Are you laundering money, Mark? Is that why we were always broke? Is that why you couldn't pay alimony? Because you were washing money for criminals?" He grabbed my wrist, his grip painful. "You stupid woman. You have no idea what you're holding. It's not just money. It's names, dates, payoffs. If they find out you have seen that, they won't just threaten Lily. They will erase us, all of us. Give it to me. I can fix it. I can tell them you didn't look." "You threatened our daughter," I hissed, leaning into him. "You sent a thug to threaten a 7-year-old." "I did what I had to do," he shouted, forgetting himself. "I had to get the book back. I'm not going to prison because my ex-wife is a snoop." "We have it," Detective Miller's voice crackled in my earpiece. "Move away, Clara." I ripped my arm from his grasp and stood up. Mark looked confused. Then he saw the men approaching from all sides. Men in jogging suits, men reading newspapers, all dropping their act and drawing badges. "Mark Sterling," Detective Miller shouted. "Police, get on the ground." Mark looked at me, betrayal and pure hatred in his eyes. He lunged for me, not to hug me, but to hurt me. He screamed, a primal sound of rage, but he was tackled before he could reach me. 3 officers pinned him to the grass. I watched as they handcuffed him. I watched as they read him his rights. I watched the man who had tormented me for years, the man who had made me feel small and worthless, being dragged away into a squad car. It felt like victory. It felt like the end. But as the police car drove away, my phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. I opened it. "He was just the middleman. You still have our property. We are coming." I stared at the screen, the blood draining from my face. Mark was in custody, but the people he worked for, Orion Holdings, they were still out there, and now they knew exactly who I was. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. The text message glowed on my screen like a radioactive warning. "He was just the middleman. You still have our property. We are coming." My hands trembled so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Mark was gone, arrested, locked away, but the beast he served was still very much alive, and it was hungry. Detective Miller saw my face. He took the phone, read the message, and his expression hardened. "We need to move," he said instantly. "Not to your apartment, not to the motel. We're putting you in protective custody, now." Sarah grabbed Lily, who was watching the scene with wide, frightened eyes. "Is the bad man gone?" Lily asked, clutching her teddy bear. "Yes, sweetie," I said, my voice shaking, "but we have to go on a little trip with the police officers, just to be safe." The next 48 hours were a blur of safe houses and interrogations. We were moved to a cabin upstate, surrounded by woods and unmarked police cars. It felt like a prison, but a necessary one. Detective Miller explained the situation. Mark wasn't just laundering money. He was the architect for the cartel's safe houses and storage facilities. The notebook didn't just contain financial records, it contained the locations of their entire operation. That's why they were desperate. That's why they threatened a 7-year-old. "We have enough to take down Mark," Miller said, pacing the small living room of the cabin. "But to take down Orion Holdings, we need you to testify about the notebook. We need to authenticate it, and until we round up the leadership, you and Lily are targets." I looked at Lily, sleeping on the couch under a heavy wool blanket. "I don't care about the case," I whispered. "I care about her. How long do we have to live like this?" "Until we catch them," Miller said grimly, "or until they find you." The threat hung in the air. 2 days later, it became reality. It was 3 a.m. The woods were silent, save for the wind. I was awake, watching the perimeter lights through the blinds. Suddenly, the lights cut out. Total darkness. Then, a sound I will never forget, the suppressed thwip of a silencer. "Get down!" Miller shouted from the kitchen. Chaos erupted. The front door was kicked in, glass shattered. I grabbed Lily, dragging her off the couch and onto the floor behind the heavy oak table. Gunfire exchanged between the officers outside and the intruders. "Clara, the back door, go!" Miller yelled, firing his weapon toward the shadowy figures entering the cabin. I didn't think. I reacted. I scooped Lily up in my arms and ran. We burst out the back door into the freezing night air. The woods were pitch black. I ran blindly, branches tearing at my clothes, my feet slipping on the wet leaves. Behind us, I heard shouting, more gunshots, and then an explosion that shook the ground. They had breached the cabin. "Mommy, I'm scared," Lily cried. "I know, baby, I know. Keep running," I gasped, my lungs burning. We ran until my legs gave out. We found a small ravine and huddled under an overhang of rocks. I covered Lily with my coat, pressing her against the dirt to hide her. We lay there for hours, listening to the sounds of men searching the woods with flashlights. They were close. I could hear their voices. "Check the ridge. She couldn't have gone far." I held my breath. I looked at Lily. If they found us, we were dead. I looked at the teddy bear she was still clutching, and then I remembered something. Mark had given her that bear years ago. He had insisted she take it everywhere. Even when he was cruel, he asked about the bear. Why? And then it hit me. The custody battle, the desperation. Mark didn't fight for Lily because he loved her. He fought for her because she had the bear. He wanted full custody so he could get the bear back without raising suspicion. I took the bear from Lily. "Sweetie, I need to check something." I felt the seam on the back. It was slightly thicker. I ripped it open. Inside the stuffing, wrapped in plastic, was a small microchip. My blood ran cold. Mark hadn't just used the notebook. He had a backup, a digital copy, and he had hidden it on his daughter, the one person no one would search. He had made our daughter a walking target. I realized then that running wasn't enough. As long as we had this chip, they would hunt us. But if I gave it to them, they would kill us anyway to tie up loose ends. I had to use it. I pulled out my phone. No signal. I had to get higher. "Lily, stay here. Do not move. Count to 1,000. If I'm not back, run that way." I pointed toward the highway lights in the distance. "Run to the cars." "Mommy, no!" "I have to, baby. I love you." I climbed out of the ravine and scrambled up the ridge. I saw the flashlights below. They were closing in on Lily's hiding spot. I didn't have time. I reached the top of the ridge, 1 bar of signal. I dialed Detective Miller's number. "Clara, where are you?" His voice was strained. He was alive. "I have the chip," I screamed into the phone. "Mark hid a chip in the bear. It has everything. I'm uploading it to the cloud drive we shared." I heard a twig snap behind me. I turned. Standing there was the man from the bookstore, the man with the scar. He had a gun pointed at my chest. "Put the phone down, Clara," he smiled. "It's over." I looked at the phone. Uploading. 80%. "You're right," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "It is over." I didn't put the phone down. I threw it. I threw it as hard as I could, high into the air, over the cliff edge behind me. The man's eyes followed the phone. In that split second of distraction, I didn't run away. I ran at him. I slammed into him with all the force of a mother protecting her cub. We tumbled backward, rolling down the steep slope of the ridge. The gun went off, a deafening crack next to my ear. We hit the bottom hard. I scrambled away, grabbing a heavy rock. He lunged at me, his hand around my throat. "You stupid bit." Crack. I brought the rock down on his head. He crumpled. I scrambled backward, gasping for air. Is he dead? I didn't wait to find out. I heard sirens. The police were coming. Miller had traced my call. I ran back to the ravine. Lily was still there, counting, trembling. 400, 401. "Lily!" She jumped into my arms. "Mommy!" Minutes later, the woods were flooded with light. SWAT teams, helicopters. Detective Miller found us, limping and bleeding, but alive. "Did you get it?" I asked as the paramedics wrapped blankets around us. Miller held up his phone. "We got the upload before the signal cut. It's all there, Clara. The accounts, the names, the locations. We're raiding Orion Holdings right now. It's over." 6 months later. The bell on the door of the second chapter bookstore chimed. I looked up from the counter. A customer walked in, smiling. "Do you have the new release on modern architecture?" he asked. "Aisle 4, I smiled back. I owned the bookstore now. Mrs. Higgins had retired and sold it to me for a song. It was mine. Lily sat in the corner doing her homework. She looked up and waved. She was happy, safe. Mark was sentenced to 25 years. The leaders of Orion Holdings were facing life sentences thanks to the data on the chip. The man with the scar was in a coma, under police guard. I walked over to the window and looked out at the street. It was raining, but I didn't mind. The rain washes things clean. I touched the necklace I wore now. It was a small silver bear, a reminder. We had lost everything. The house, the money, the life we thought we wanted. But we had gained something far more valuable. We had found our strength. We had walked through the fire and come out the other side, not as victims, but as survivors. I looked back at Lily. She wasn't just my daughter anymore. She was my partner, my hero. "Mommy," she called out, "are we going to get ice cream later?" I laughed. "Yes, sweetie, double scoops." I locked the door, flipped the sign to closed, and took my daughter's hand. We walked out into the rain, ready for whatever came next. Because now I knew, no matter how dark the night gets, the dawn always comes, and we would be ready to greet it.